Chapter 7. Jeffrey, it's simple. You have the shortest learning curve. I started to say something, but Roger's hand sliced the air across his throat like a film director would to stop the action. Jeff, please, hear me out, or the questions will overshadow the facts. We share a common goal to raise our consciousness and others' awareness as well. Is this not true? Just nod. I nodded. If the means of reaching that goal was placed before you, would you not use it? Again, I nodded, but a bit slower this time. Roger noticed the delay and went on to say, if an act as horrible as murder was being committed, would you not do everything in your power to stop it from happening? I nodded a positive yes. But what would you do? How would you stop it? What is the first thing you would do, Jeffrey? Confusion popped into my mind as I tried to visualize a reply, but my thoughts were interrupted. Nothing. You cannot barge into a murder in progress. You have no training and you are not Jackie Chan. Do you see the helplessness of your situation? You cannot prevent the killer from killing, and you cannot save the victim. It's best not to know. If you do know, you are compelled to do something to stop this horrific action from happening, without thinking about the consequences to yourself. After all, you're only human. Roger paused to let this statement sink in and then continued. Now, take this idea one step further. Knowing what you know from living your life as a student of esoteric studies, do you have the right to intervene? Again, Roger pressed on without waiting for an answer. I believe it was one of your presumptions in your book. There are no true aristocrats anymore. It is all a matter of image. If a person looks the part, they are trusted to act the part image over substance. That is why celebrity magazines are bestsellers. People want to know if a person who portrays a larger-than-life image is deserving of the honor bestowed upon them. Do they really have any of the characteristics of the person they portray? I believe you gave credit to Jose Gasset Ortega's The Revolt of the Masses. Today there are no leaders who have a true sense of their responsibility of office, to guide and protect the people who surrender their trust to them, to do the right thing. Today's citizens are not secure in that their trust will not be taken for granted. In the past, people would show honor to those in power by obeying their commands and granting them special privileges so as not to take away from their real duties of looking out for their benefit. This was the trade-off for having someone guide their lives and protect them. This was the true role of the aristocracy. This ideal has been diluted over the years. The essence of trust placed in leaders is lost, and all that remains is the trappings for today's egocentric officials. True aristocrats would not put up with the corruption of the selection process, the backroom deals made by power mongers on policies that benefit only a few of their own. I made up my mind to get a word in edgewise. Well, what are you saying? The murder glass is a symbol of power only to be controlled by a powerful leader, to use the glass to direct his followers to stop the killing by overwhelming forces because he has good intentions? I slapped the printout of my research on the glass on the table. Roger glanced at it and said, No, this is not what I'm saying. That would have made the controller of the glass and his followers into fanatics, like most of the isms and osms of the world. Let me give you some background about the glass, then we can plan on how to reveal it to the world. I sat back. Many questions were forming, but I kept silent to hear about the glass. Looking down at the printout, Roger nodded. Yes, it was in the middle of the 1800s in Paris that the glass first appeared. Supposedly, the Dalai Lama sent an emissary to destroy the Ouija board because it was the cause of much conflict. But it is not the whole story. You see, the board itself was not the power. It was what the board was made of that contained the power. It is the crystals embedded in the typed script that are tuned to vibrate to the lowest negative human thought patterns. The followers of Buddha referred to the crystals that make up the typeface as the diamond polisher. It was a learning aid to the great book, The Diamond Cutter. As you know, the book was authored by Buddha's direct disciples and contains the actual words of Buddha. The diamond polisher was a learning tool to be used by the Tantrum Lamas so that they could learn to recognize coarse vibrations. You have to remember that in the 1800s, Tibet was totally isolated from the rest of the world. As word got out about the capabilities of the diamond polisher, the lamas of the Black Hat Monastery knew there would soon be a battle for control over such a tool. So they concealed the diamond polisher in the typeface of an Ouija board from those who were too impatient to study the vibrations on their own. As word leaked out about the existence of the board, a battle to control the board ensued by those who wanted to prove to their followers that their faction held the real power. Needless to say, the quest for the board by the two warring factions ended in Paris with the destruction of the board as planned by the guardians of the crystals. The board may have been destroyed, but the crystals were not. The emissary became very ill and passed the crystals to a person who had been guiding him throughout Europe. The emissary requested the European guide hide the crystals well and to seek out a worthy person to act as guardian of the crystals until man was ready to use the crystals for the purpose for which they were intended. The crystals were passed down through the guide's family with the knowledge of the power of the crystals, along with the understanding that they were to be kept well hidden. One of the guide's great-grandsons was a glassblower in Amsterdam. It was he who concealed the crystals in the glass. He then passed it on to his son, who was a friend of Richard Lansing. Richard sought me out when I returned to India. Richard told me he was attempting to return something to the High Lama when news of China's invasion of Tibet and the Dalai Lama's flight to India were reported. He confided in me because he has read the book I wrote on the Eastern occult resources used by Talbot Mundy for his novels about the Lamas of Tibet. He told me he was a good friend of William Gibbons, the real name of Talbot Mundy. Lansing looked exhausted. He asked me a few questions about my core beliefs, and I told him I had no one belief, but seek true knowledge. He smiled and then told me the story of the crystals. He said he was too ill to travel to Tibet and asked me if I could find a safe place to store the glass. He would contact me later with instructions of where to send it. He also said that if I did not hear from him, I was to shatter the glass and send the fragments to the current High Tantrum Lama. He showed me how the glass worked and told me not to get captured by its power. The glass can drain one's life force and drive you mad with despair, because you are helpless to stop the terror that you witness. Of course, I tried to use it. I learned to feel the subtle vibrations of anger that can set a person off into a murderous tirade. I learned what frequencies to use to prevent someone from acting out in a rage. I practiced by hanging out in bars. There, violence is just below the surface and ready to erupt at the slightest provoking. I also went to courtrooms and outside of jails that housed murderers. I learned to avoid these places that triggered coarse vibrations. I found no one type of place that had cornered revenge, be it slums or estates. I learned to see the effects of low vibes on people. It became apparent to me that the quest for justice was mostly an excuse for revenge. True justice was pushed aside. People do not know how to empathize with their fellow man. When people are hurt, they emit low vibes and they want to strike out, not necessarily to right a wrong, but to inflict pain. I saw this in courts of law, time and time again, as well as on the street. I realized the world was not ready for this knowledge, not in its present state of awareness. I did not know how to get in contact with the High Tantrum Lama, but I knew the power of the glass was much needed to advance man. After many years of waiting to be contacted, my dilemma is still how to get the knowledge of the diamond polisher out without the fallout it would surely cause. Then I remembered your book and the turmoil it caused. So I thought it would not be a stretch to have you write a novel based on the glass. No one would know whether the book was fiction or nonfiction. It would depend on how one perceives what they read and whether they try to apply what they've read. Even though you are loathed, you are still considered a great writer. The book will be read regardless of what people think of you. Remember, you will either be taken for a crackpot, a heretic, the Antichrist, or just a good storyteller. However, the knowledge of this power must get out to only those who seek and desire to learn to tune their consciousness to recognize these vibrations in a positive way. This is the only way the glass can be used. If enough people are attuned, They will be able to blanket the lower vibrations and by sheer numbers alone raise the level of all mankind to a higher vibration of consciousness. Of course, as word spreads, so will the desire to control the diamond polisher. So a novel would keep doubt in the minds of those who want to exploit the glass, while igniting the desire in those who truly seek to raise their consciousness on their own, and in turn teach what they have learned on to their fellow man. Will you think about it, Jeff?